There is no future, I think, without an intersection or a bridge to on-chain payments. It's not going to exist. They are super helpful into the future of financial accounts, into the future of payments. You can sit back and watch. You can choose to be scared, or you can actually step in and iterate and learn your way through it.
All the recent travels that I've done in the past month, South America, Korea, Singapore, Southeast Asia, there's been a consistent theme around borderless payments, cross-border payments, remittances, how we get more usage adoption on the stablecoin side. I think we all know this was a stablecoin summer we're coming out of, and more people than ever are talking about the category. What has been most fascinating to me is to see all these traditional businesses jump into the stablecoin race, from Visa and MasterCard. In addition, one of the earliest entrants was PayPal. We spoke with Larry Wade down in Rio from PayPal. We've spoken to Jose many times, who used to run that group. Now, for this episode, we have May Zabana. She's the head of crypto at PayPal. I wanted to talk to her and find out what's happening in PayPal's entrance into the space. They, again, have been very committed to what they're doing. They're working on a ton of different things as well. And of all of the main brands that have been sort of dancing around this, I think PayPal's been one of the loudest to say, no, we are here and we are really interested in understanding how we can transform businesses and peer-to-peer payments. So it was great to just sit down with May, hear what she's working on, and get a sense of, if you were building PayPal today, what would you do in crypto? So with that, after the break, May Zabana from PayPal.
Break the cycle of exploitation, break down the barriers to truth, break into the next generation of privacy, break free. Free to scroll without being monetized, free from censorship, freedom without fear. We deserve more when it comes to privacy. Experience the next generation of blockchain that is private and inclusive by design. Break free with Midnight. Visit midnight.network/break-free. Built for speed, scale, and simplicity, Bridge helps businesses send, store, accept, and launch stablecoins instantly. Serve global customers without navigating the complexities of setting up crypto rails. It's how companies like X, Shopify, and AirTM unlock new markets, reduce FX costs, and move money at internet speed.
Looking for a faster, cheaper way to move money worldwide? Owlting, now listed on NASDAQ under the ticker symbol OWLS, is building the rails for stablecoin payments. Convert fiat to stablecoins and send money as easily as a text message. Learn more at owlting.com.
Hi, welcome back. We are here with May Zabana, head of crypto at PayPal. May, welcome to the show. Excited to see you. How are you doing today?
Oh, so great to be here. Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you?
I am fantastic. May, we were recently in Rio with your colleague, Larry Wade. We talked a lot of things, stablecoins. I know we're going to address that here. And I'm really just interested in both your arc as well as PayPal's arc into these digital assets. I noticed that you have been at PayPal for quite a long time, 2007, I think you started. You've been through Web 2, the mobile boom, kind of the rise of fintech, now crypto. Like, what has kept you curious about fintech this long?
So as you can tell, I'm a person that's very curious. And so part of what makes it super fun and fascinating. And PayPal has a wealth of different products within our portfolio. And so I've been very lucky to be able to do different parts, different roles, as well as touch the different aspects of our technology. So from consumer experiences to merchants to the different product lines we have. It's been a really fun journey to just continue on that evolution and really dig into like true customer needs and then trying to help solve that in a commerce experience and connecting the world in a global way. So I clearly love technology. I think payments are critical in helping connect people, ultimately get and receive what they want. And it's something that should work seamlessly and something that should just be, you don't have to think about it, but it's always there and trusted. And so as we've seen technology evolve, and so whether that's been exactly as you said, from mobile payments to like buy now, pay later type services, as well as the adoption of like blockchain technology into making like better, faster and cheaper payments, it gets me really excited to be able to have that purpose and solve like real problems for people that we can adapt.
I love that. Thank you for sharing your passion. Did someone just say, hey, May, check out this crypto thing? Or did you have a personal interest in like kind of what was your red pill moment if you had one?
Actually did get tapped in for this role. So it was that. And I think a bit of it's been kind of my history of just leading in areas that are 0 to 1 and really thinking about technology and customer experiences. And I think that angle of really solving for customers and then bringing it into a domain that still was emerging was really where kind of that fit happened. As for me personally, I was a little bit, honestly, on the sidelines before that. I was like, it was something that I saw and it was emerging, but I really believe in like trusted payments also. And so I didn't feel as comfortable at the time. I remember when it was like everything was emerging and it's like, hey, wait, I have to have a seed phrase and I have to like think about all this. And so it just as that curious consumer coming into the equation, it felt like a lot for me as a mainstream user entering. But then obviously when I took on the role, you start down the rabbit hole and you discover like how deep and how powerful the technology can be and how much it can apply and really help people. And it just gets you super excited.
I have a high profile interview coming up, and it's with one of the founders of PayPal. I was doing some research and I started to read, which I'd never done. My own shows my failing. I had never read the founders about the origin story of PayPal. But what was so interesting to me is there's a quote that I found that is in, I think, the introduction, where the author, Jimmy Soni, talks about, he says, he sort of quotes that sites like PayPal were often thought to be portals for illicit activity like money laundering, for the sale of drugs and weapons. On the eve of its IPO, a prominent trade publication declared that the country needed PayPal as much as it needed the anthrax epidemic. And I thought this quote was amazing because these are all the things people say about crypto, and they still say about crypto. Back then, when PayPal was coming out in like 99, it's like, my father was not putting his credit card into the internet. Now he is buying things literally every day. So I think about the fact of like that arc of in 20 years or so, we've gotten to a place where people are so comfortable with this thing that they thought was really scary to them and they thought was really evil in many ways. And now here we are. And, that conversation has died down in crypto now that you can put it in your retirement fund, but it still happens, not just in political circles, but also amongst people I talk to, just friends in daily life. I guess, do you see any parallels of the idea of PayPal, luckily through yourself and Larry and Jose and all these people, had really taken an early step to embracing this as a technology? How do you feel about the idea that, are we reliving history again to some degree, where 10 years from now, people are going to be like, and you were scared of this thing?
I think that's already here, to be honest. Like, I think the reality is like we've arrived at that moment. I mean, I think when you think about like the Genius Act and our first US legislation around stablecoins, like how powerful are we in this moment? How much it helped the traditional players kind of legitimize the entry into the ecosystem. So I think there is no doubt on-chain payments are here. I think that in money, there is always, no matter what it is, money always carries different ways that people will utilize it, and people will find ways to use the system and not in the original kind of intent of it. But I think that the world is absolutely moving on chain. I think stablecoins are a fundamental part in that equation because of its stability, but still having the attributes of that speed 24/7, the instancy, right, and the cost reductions. And so I think that conversation, which is what, especially when you look like at the news every day, you're hearing whether it's a major fintech or a different player or a bank or globally around the world, they're all talking about adopting stablecoins or thinking about stablecoins. So I think that tells us a lot about the industry, exactly to what you said. It's moved from something into something else, but I think it's started to be established at this point.
I think established is one thing. I think usage is another. I would love to understand the insights that you guys have, because we think a lot about the conversation of all the people who are holding Bitcoin and just will continue to hold forever because they're like religiously interested in Bitcoin. But then you travel to South America, Asia, you see people who are using stablecoins every single day back and forth as really a primary use of fintech that didn't exist for them or wasn't as stable as it needed to be. So like, what are the insights you're seeing from how people are using crypto on PayPal?
Yeah, I think it's like a fantastic question. And I think when you think back to just like exactly as you said, like kind of working customer back, like thinking in the US versus an emerging markets or developed aspect are two very different things, right? So when you think about the US, and I'd say honestly, like when you just look at the industry, 95% of stablecoins are being used in crypto trading, right? So, and that's across the board globally. But to your point, where you see kind of higher adoption into more payment use cases, it's really in areas and markets and regions where there's high inflation, where people need more economic stability. And so the access to US dollars is super critical. So I love that example that you used because it really tells you at a global scale where adoption is happening. It tells you kind of the different needs that are evolving and where the product market fits are. I think the only one additional one I'll say is just cross-border payments, right? When you think about what the unlocks can be or the efficiencies in helping businesses or helping customers, that's truly where you can start to see like a greater product fit also from a payments use case. So to the adoption, like again, in the US, like we're more a trading business. My colleague and I were just talking about this the other day. It was like we were going down a bit on memory lane down on our payments aspect in crypto. And I think it was somewhere in the 2016 to 2017 where actually we actually enabled as a company on our platform Bitcoin as a payment method. So when you think back as that and you think back about how much one, the industry's evolved, but also like the interest in technology over time and how much it can really help from payments adoption and use case, it's really fascinating to see where we were and where we are and kind of heading towards it.
I love to hear that that's where we're going to go with this. I guess I think about it through the lens of there's peer-to-peer, right, which is really like the heart of crypto. But I can't imagine your phone is not ringing off the hook also from partners, businesses, small to large, who are saying, wait, I keep hearing about stablecoins or I keep hearing about crypto. How do I enable usage of this? How do you think, like just in your opinion, how do you think this like affects the medium-sized business of the world?
It's an excellent question because when you think about like businesses of all sizes, like you said, when you think about the larger ones, they're more highly optimized in their treasury movement and right being able to move money and around their own entities. They also probably get to negotiate most of like the lower costs in the ecosystem. And when you look at the smaller business and medium-sized ones, you see a lot more of the concentration of the pain points of cost, of establishing trust when they want to do global business, where time and money really is material to their actual livelihood. And so I think that there is something very valuable for us to be able to solve as technology players and payments experts to really help unlock how do you now enable that payment for this business to send to another person instead of 3 to 5 days to settle, instead of $20 to $30 to for that cost of whatever it is, let's just say even $1,000 of payment. That adds up so much over time. If you have to pay your suppliers, you have to pay your vendors, you have to do business with other people around the world. So I'd say it's a really acute pain point, and it's a really great question from you because that's really where I think a lot of the pain can be solved and value back.
This episode is sponsored by Bridge, a Stripe company. Just as the internet made information global, stablecoins are making money global, and Bridge is the infrastructure powering that shift. Built for speed, scale, and simplicity, Bridge helps businesses send, store, accept, and launch stablecoins instantly, serve global customers without navigating the complexities of setting up crypto rails. It's how companies like X, Shopify, and AirTM unlock new markets, reduce FX costs, and move money at internet speed. Explore the future of global financial infrastructure at bridge.xyz.
Looking for a faster, cheaper way to move money worldwide? Owlting, now listed on NASDAQ under the ticker symbol OWLS, is building the rails for stablecoin payments. With OwlPay, you can seamlessly convert fiat currency to stablecoins, send money as easily as a text message, and on or off-ramp globally. Learn more about Owlting at owlting.com.
I love what you said because I keep saying to people, hey, in the end, these services will make the cost of doing business cheaper. And it's not at the cost of the business or the vendor. It's that we are able to sort of, I guess, work out through technology quicker, faster, cheaper ways in which to move money around the world. And I also love that companies like PayPal, and to some degree what Visa and MasterCard are doing, are all looking at this and saying, hey, we know we might even be disrupting our own business a little bit, but we know it's where money is going. So we have to lead versus follow.
Exactly. And if you think about today, like if you were to build PayPal today, you would absolutely build it on chain, right? Or you'd build it with the capability to interact with stablecoins. And it's exactly like you said, like there is no future, I think, without an intersection or a bridge to on-chain payments. It's not going to exist. They are super helpful into the future of financial accounts, into the future of payments. And so you can sit back and watch, you can choose to be scared, or you can actually step in and iterate and learn your way through it. And anybody who says they figured it out, like, it's not true, right? We're in a constantly evolving, super dynamic industry, which kind of makes it thrilling in its own right. Like, every day you need to run at a speed we've not ran before, also in technology.
Love that. Going to clip it, quote it. I'm stealing it. So do my best to give you some credit. Right now, USDT, USDC are the big global players in stablecoins. And partly because I think the industry loves the idea that this is very much non-Web 2, non-big business money, even though we can see the profitability of a Tether and see how big this company actually is. With PYUSD, PayPal's own stablecoin, you are early again entering into that game. And I'm wondering what you believe your point of differentiation is when dollar peg stablecoins feel like they could become a commodity, and then it really becomes the service layer that makes them different.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when we think about it, it's really fundamentally very simple, right? So we're a payments company that's done commerce around the world for decades. And so when you take that, what is that? And you unpack that for a second, what does that mean? It means we have a distribution network of consumers as well as merchants. And then on top of that, we have payments flows, which we can optimize to be better with our own stablecoin. So what no other from the ones you've mentioned and others out there have is exactly those things, is a distribution network as well as the coin, as well as these expertise in payments. And that's where is our true differentiation. And that's where we really want to drive and help the ecosystem as a whole continue to drive more efficiency around commerce globally for both sides of that network, consumers and merchants.
And following up on that, I think about the conversation I had with MoneyGram when I was down in Rio. And I think MoneyGram does this great job of being the off-ramp, right? You need to get pesos or yuan, whatever the cash is out, they're there for you. But I think one of the things PayPal did really well, what Venmo does really well, is it allows us to say what happens in a world where we don't need cash anymore, where we can just keep going back and forth. Do you have an opinion on, is the final destination, does it need to have an off-ramp, or is the off-ramp really just a lubricant of just how do we move this money between the people who need it and then allow them to spend it better?
I think if I fast forward and imagine the world in the future, I think you have a currency that doesn't need to be converted because it then becomes adopted and accepted everywhere. So you could almost imagine a place that at the local shop that you're going to go visit, if you're a tourist traveling, you could just use a stablecoin and it just becomes a rail that's accepted around the world. But we're obviously not there. And so when you then step back and you say, okay, people do need to off-ramp it because they need to now pay their utility bill or they need to pay their grocery bills, and those places don't. So what you're seeing is like other form factors that are emerging, like a card that still can spend your crypto. If that store obviously doesn't accept crypto, you could use a different form factor that's more accessible, or you absolutely have to have the ability to be able to transfer that into cash to be able to use. And so I think the optionality, depending, because the world's not yet fully on kind of one platform, one network, and one interoperable way. So I think it is important in this term of where we are in the technology and adoption and different aspects. But I do see a future in a world where honestly, consumers shouldn't and merchants shouldn't even have to think about, it should just be what they think about their money. And behind the scenes, whether it's upfront or behind the scenes for them, we should just, as technology providers, hey, if it's sending internationally, let me send it on stablecoin rails because that's cheaper and faster for you, and you just see lower costs. So utilizing the best kind of use case, that's, I think, where we really should be heading.
Poke holes in this analogy, but for me, I think about the fact that I run CoinDesk's social channels. And I've been having the conversation with our teams about whether we need to keep posting to our CoinDesk and Espanol channel. And I say that not because we don't have a wide audience that reads in Spanish, they do, but Google is locally translating our site into Spanish for them already. If we post on Twitter, it's being translated for the most part into Spanish-speaking countries, automatically into Spanish. It's not perfect, and there's still some countries, for example, it doesn't work very well, which is part of the reason to continue for the short term in us, but we all think, okay, there's going to come a world soon where we don't have to think about that. I almost think that this is the same, where you might have $50 of PYUSD in a wallet somewhere. I go to the store, it's just going to auto settle to whatever the payment is on the back end. And we're not going to think about what that is anymore. We're just going to know we have this much money and this costs this much, and it's just going to do with it. And like, is that the right way to think about this?
I do. I think if done right, that's where we end up. Like, it should be exactly that. I think we shouldn't overburden consumers and merchants with all the aspects. Like, if you think about it today, you ask a consumer today, how do you think money really moves? I guarantee that most people won't be able to tell you, like, from the bank accounts and the networks and the acquirers and the issuers and like all the different players in the ecosystem and the roles and the parts and the pieces. So I think that at the end of the day, if we serve customers best, that we need to simplify all of this and just use technology exactly as you said. Like, you shouldn't have to think about it. It should just operate in the most effective, efficient way for you. But it's got to drive back value, to your point. Like, and you should have, like, it can't be charging you multiples and multiples of costs.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to ask next about your partnership strategy. I was just earlier this morning at the Aptos event. I know you guys are partners with Aptos. We were at Stellar's event. You're partners with Stellar. You're working with Layer Zero, with Yellow Card. There's a ton of people who you guys work with. How do you look at those partnerships as a way to kind of scale the brand?
I think partnerships are incredibly important. I think as an ecosystem player, like, traditionally we've always done partnerships, right? In PayPal's history, when you think about that, and for various different reasons. And I think in the end of the day, partnerships are core. So exactly as you said, like, these additional chains are all different use cases, different ways, different distributions, right? And so anytime you think about all these, it's really the value. What is the win-in for the partnership, for them as well as for us? And then how do you continue to grow the ecosystem in ways, instead of building it yourself altogether? And I love your analogy you were just using before, because it's like, hey, is it at the end of the day, services and other players just start to provide things that you don't actually have to do and maybe isn't your core expertise? And that's exactly when then you marry 1 + 1 = actually 3. And then you grow an entire ecosystem together and drive more value and drive more places, liquidity, distribution, like, you name it. You can really unlock things for customers in meaningful ways by expanding and adding that value.
And we've touched on the idea that you guys are looking at payments and you have a wonderful distribution network across the world of millions of people who are utilizing the product. You also recognize the needs for small businesses, medium-sized businesses, large businesses. So as you think about how that footprint expands with these partnerships, with all these different chains that you're on, I guess how much of this is about, like, hey, we are going to make fees somewhere by moving big amounts of global money around, or is it about the, like, transactional volume of small purchases? Sort of what's the strategy for continuing to grow this product?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, PayPal today serves consumers, small merchants, mid-sized merchants, and large merchants. And so I think our role will continue to play across all of them. I think you'll see from us, from the crypto perspective or stablecoin perspective specifically, it's just going to be more expanded globally and more expanded into more use cases that can then serve each of these different segments of customers in their own way, which matters most to them. So I think that's really fundamentally our strategy. You know, if we think about how do you take PayPal more on chain, how do you help bridge that? We'll play within the growing our access and growing more utility and use cases and ways that people can seamlessly send money movement across the world. And we'll obviously stay close within the crypto community and crypto users, and but do this in a very mainstream way.
As we think about the future, I'd be remiss not to ask the question of whether or not you at PayPal are thinking about how AI plays into this world. You know, are you bullish on agentic payments? Are you thinking more like, oh, we actually get to do fraud detection better and scam detection better and protect consumers? Where does AI play a role in your blockchain thinking?
Yeah, I get super excited about AI because I think, like, I can now imagine a world where agents are communicating, connecting, and paying each other with stable coins. And, like, I think what an incredible different world, right? We're in a moment in history that's like never before, right? We're agentic, we're stable coins, where the possibilities and the imagination of what can happen and what can actually lead is it's bleeding edge, and it's super, super exciting from a technology perspective. But I definitely think so. I think stablecoins should and will be the form of payment in agentic payments.
2 more questions, and then I'm going to let you go. The first is, if you were to project out 2, 3, 5 years, where do you think digital money is going?
So kind of related to the previous, your previous question for me, I do think I think it's just a more connected world, a connected commerce world. I think that's just how I'd say it. And how that manifests is through all those different things. But I think ultimately it becomes more inclusive, it becomes more accessible, it becomes more cost effective, and it becomes faster and more seamless for people to interact and transact.
All right. And then my final question for you is, May, again, you've had a wonderfully long career, not just at PayPal, but in general. My question is a personal one of like, who do you look up to? Who's the person who influences how you do your work? Is there someone that comes to mind that says, you know, I've modeled my career after big thinkers or big visionaries, and this is the one that comes to mind for me?
It's fascinating. I think I'll answer that on twofold. I think at a personal level, my parents have kind of been my guideposts, not from a career perspective, right, but more from who I like show up in the world as, and kind of the values and principles. And I think that's one of the most very important things for me is like just how you operate and who you are in the world, and kind of who your pillar and guide is in that, as well as candidly like my religion also within that. So that just helps from a value perspective. And then from an actual specific personality of that, I've never had like one person that but I've admired different leaders for different things. I think it's really hard and be remiss to not like mention a Steve Jobs in the world, because just the experience that he was able to create and just that aspect of how clean the product was and how intersected it was, and the network and everything you got around that, and the simplicity and intuitiveness is something, for example, that really appealed to me. And so that's kind of been always a design principle for me, is like, hey, would you ever design something like this? Like, how would you apply it? How would a customer think about it? Because I know I appreciate simplicity. I know I appreciate things that just are intuitive. I don't have to sit and kind of figure them out, especially on the basics. And so that's just one example. The list is long, as there's been so much like technology and innovation that's happened in this world.
I love that. You know, I recently listened to an interview with Sam Altman where he talked about the iPhone being like the single most important invention in modern times. And even in your company, if you think of PayPal sort of in some respects getting its start trying to beam payments between IR devices like Palm Pilots, and how much having a device like the iPhone sort of supercharged the ability of what you guys were able to do, I think is pretty dramatic. May, thank you so much for your time today. It was wonderful to speak with you, connect, hear what PayPal's up to, and we are excited to pay attention in the future, see where it goes.
So great to meet you. Thank you for having me.